Wind cut through the pines like a sermon on Judgment Day. Caleb Thornwood rode the fence line, checking for breaks before the next storm rolled in. Cattle needed grazing room. Ice made them stupid. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Weak, high, almost swallowed by wind, crying. He spurred the roan toward the river crossing. 20 feet from the frozen bank, a small shape lay crumpled in the snow. Dark coat, pale hands, a child. He was off the horse before it stopped, knelt, rolled her gently. 7, maybe 8 years old, lips blue, breath shallow, rattling, her eyes fluttered open, brown, glassy, terrified. She gripped his coat with fingers like ice and whispered 6 words that would break the next 4 months wide open. My chest hurts when I breathe. Something leather-bound lay beneath her, a journal. He reached for it, but hoofbeats echoed behind him. Caleb wrapped the child in his coat and lifted her, light as kindling, her head lolled against his chest. The journal stayed in the snow. He'd come back for it. He mounted one-handed, settled her in front of him, and kicked the roan hard. 8 miles to town. 8 miles through cold that could stop a heart. The child's breathing hitched and stuttered. He held her tighter, angling his body to block the wind. Her hair smelled like wood smoke and fever. Under that, something metallic, wrong. "Stay with me," he muttered. "Stay." She didn't answer. Doc Esther Whitmore's office sat above the dry goods store, lamplight already burning in the window. Caleb took the stairs 2 at a time, shouldered through the door without knocking. Doc looked up from her table, needle halfway through a suture on a ranch hand's arm. She took one look at the child and pointed to the examination bed. "Lay her down gently." Caleb obeyed. The child's eyes were closed now. Her chest rose and fell in shallow jerks. Doc pressed 2 fingers to the girl's neck, counting. Her face tightened. "How long was she out there?" "Don't know. Found her at the crossing." "Alone?" "Alone." Doc cut away the girl's wet dress with scissors, revealing skin too pale, ribs too prominent. Old bruises yellowed along her shoulder blades. Fresh ones darkened her forearms. Caleb's jaw clenched. Doc noticed, but said nothing. She placed a stethoscope to the child's chest, listened, moved it, listened again. "Pneumonia, advanced, malnutrition." Doc straightened, reached for a vial of medicine. "She should be dead already." "But she's not." "Not yet." Doc poured liquid into a spoon, coaxed it between the child's lips. "We need to warm her, slowly. Too fast, and her heart will stop." Caleb fed the stove while Doc worked. Blankets, hot water bottles, whiskey-soaked rags on the girl's feet. The room filled with the smell of camphor and coal smoke. Outside, boots hammered up the stairs. The door banged open. Silas Hargrove stood in the threshold, Sheriff Tom Barlow behind him. Hargrove wore a wool coat that cost more than most men earned in a year. His face was flushed, breathing hard like he'd run. "Where is she?" Doc stepped between Hargrove and the bed. "Examining a patient." "That patient is my niece." Hargrove pulled a folded document from his coat. "Legal guardianship, signed by Judge Colfax and Helena. She's mine." Caleb's hand drifted toward his holster. Sheriff Barlow noticed, shook his head slightly. Doc took the paper, scanned it. Her mouth thinned. "Says here Sarah Kellerman abandoned her child 3 weeks ago. Whereabouts unknown." "That's right." "Convenient." Hargrove's eyes went cold. "The law doesn't care about your opinions, Esther." Doc handed the paper back. "The child is dying. She doesn't travel tonight. I'm not asking permission." Hargrove moved toward the bed. Caleb stepped into his path. They were the same height, but Caleb had 30 pounds of muscle and 3 years of silence to spend. "She needs care." "She'll get care. At my house." "Your house is where those bruises came from." The room went still. Sheriff Barlow's hand moved to his gun belt. Not drawing, just resting. Hargrove smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "That's a serious accusation, Thornwood. You got proof? Witnesses? Or just the word of a man who hasn't spoken 10 sentences to another soul since his wife died?" Caleb said nothing. The truth was a blade that cut both ways. Hargrove turned to the sheriff. "Tom, remove him." Barlow sighed, stepped forward. "Caleb, I got no choice here. Judge signed the paper. Guardianship's legal." "She's not strong enough." "That's for a doctor to say." Barlow looked at Doc. Doc's eyes burned, but her voice stayed level. "Medically, she shouldn't be moved. Ethically, I can't stop you. Legally—" She glanced at the paper in Hargrove's hand. "The law's clear." Hargrove smiled again. "Wrap her up. I'll carry her myself." Caleb's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed to draw, to end this. But Barlow's hand was still on his gun, and the law was a noose that tightened when you pulled. Doc wrapped the child in 2 blankets and lifted her with care that made Hargrove's impatience look like the cruelty it was. She handed the bundle to him. Mercy's eyes opened, just a crack, focused on Caleb. Her hand reached out from the blanket, small and pale and shaking. "Please," she whispered, so quiet he almost missed it. "Please don't let him take me." Hargrove turned toward the door. The child's hand dropped. Sheriff Barlow touched Caleb's shoulder. "Let it go." Caleb stood in the doorway and watched them load her into Hargrove's carriage. Watched the door close. Watched the wheels turn. Watched the lamplight fade down the street. When the sound of hoofbeats died, he turned back to Doc. "I'm going back for the journal." Doc nodded, handed him a lantern. "Whatever you find in it, Caleb, don't do anything stupid." He took the lantern, said nothing, rode back into the cold. The journal lay half buried in snow where the child had dropped it. Caleb brushed ice from the cover, leather, worn, initials stamped in the corners, K. He opened it by lantern light, snow falling around him. First page, neat handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm dead. My name is Sarah Kellerman, my brother is Silas Hargrove, and he's been poisoning people for their land." Caleb read, by lamplight, at his kitchen table. The journal open before him, coffee gone cold in his cup. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Inside, the fire burned low. He didn't notice either. Sarah Kellerman had neat handwriting, the kind taught in Eastern schools, each entry dated, each fact recorded like she knew someone would need proof. October 3rd, 1883. Thomas Brennan died today. "Fever," Doc said. But Tom was healthy as an ox last month. His widow sold the property to Silas for $60. It's worth $600. October 19th. Mary Chen's husband passed. Same fever, same buyer. $40 for land near the creek. November 2nd. The Kowalski family. All 3 children. Father dead by November 10th. Land sold November 15th. Caleb turned pages. 15 entries, 15 deaths, 15 properties now owned by Silas Hargrove. The entries grew more frantic toward the end. December 8th. I tested our well water. Tastes metallic. Mercy's been sick for 2 weeks, coughing, weak. I bought bottled water from the store. She's improving, but Silas noticed. He asked why I wasn't using the pump anymore. December 14th. Found powder in the rain barrel. White. Crystalline. I think it's arsenic. God help me, I think my brother is poisoning us. December 22nd. Confronted Silas. He said I was hysterical. Said grief over my husband's death has made me paranoid. But his eyes... I know what I saw. He knows I know. The journal ended there. Dated 3 weeks ago. Caleb closed it, stared at the cover. Thought about a 7-year-old girl with bruises and a rattling cough and eyes that begged him not to let her go. He thought about the law. About papers signed by judges. About how justice was supposed to work. Then he thought about Sarah Kellerman's last words, written in careful script at the bottom of the final page. "If I disappear, don't let Mercy drink the water. The powder is in the rain barrel. Please. Someone. Don't let him take her." Caleb stood, strapped on his gun belt, reached for his coat. The door burst open. Sheriff Barlow stood on the threshold, hand on his weapon. Behind him, 2 deputies, behind them torchlight and voices. "Caleb Thornwood, step outside." Caleb's hand stopped halfway to his holster. "What's this about, Tom?" "Silas Hargrove filed a complaint, says you tried to abduct his niece, says you threatened him at Doc's office, says you've been acting erratic since your wife passed." Barlow's voice was tired, apologetic. "Says he's worried you might try something tonight." "That man is murdering people. You got proof of that?" Caleb gestured to the journal on the table. Barlow walked over, glanced at the open page. "This belonged to you?" "Belongs to Sarah Kellerman." "Where'd you get it?" "Her daughter was carrying it when I found her." Barlow flipped through pages. His face showed nothing. Finally, he closed it. "This is a woman's diary. Not evidence. Just thoughts. Suspicions." "It's a record." "Of what? Fever deaths? People die of fever every winter out here. Land gets sold cheap when families are desperate. That's tragedy, Caleb, not crime. Read the last entry." Barlow did. His jaw tightened. But when he looked up, his eyes held something worse than anger. Pity. Says she confronted him, says she thought he was poisoning her. Doesn't say he admitted anything, doesn't say she found proof. He set the journal down. "And now she's gone. Convenient witness, isn't she? Dead women tell good stories. She's not dead. You know where she is? Caleb said nothing. Thought so. Barlow moved toward the door. Here's how this goes. You stay away from Hargrove's house. You stay away from that girl. You keep your theories to yourself. Because if I hear you've been spreading this around town, making accusations you can't prove, I'll have to lock you up, for your own good. My own good? You're not thinking straight, Caleb. Haven't been since Martha died. I get it. I do. But this, he tapped the journal. This is grief talking, and grief makes men see things that aren't there. The deputies shifted behind him. One held a pair of iron cuffs. Caleb looked at them. At Barlow, at the journal on his table. I'm not going anywhere tonight, he said quietly. Barlow nodded. Smart man. He gestured to the deputies. They backed out slowly, hands still near their weapons. At the door, Barlow paused. One more thing. Hargrove accelerated the note on your ranch. Caleb's blood went cold. What? Bank called in your loan, says you got 90 days to pay $800 or the property goes to auction. Barlow's face showed real regret now. I'm sorry, Caleb, but that's legal too. Bank's right to call a note early if they see fit. This is retaliation. This is business, and you can't prove otherwise. Barlow tipped his hat. 90 days, starting today. The door closed. Hoofbeats faded. Caleb stood alone in his cabin, the journal on the table, the fire dying in the hearth. He walked to the window, looked toward town, toward the big house on the hill where lamplight burned in every window, where a 7-year-old girl lay dying and the man killing her held every legal card. $800, 90 days, an entire ranch built by his grandfather, maintained by his father, nearly lost when Martha died and now slipping through his fingers like smoke. He could sell the cattle, maybe get 400, not enough, could borrow. But Hargrove owned the only bank within 200 miles. The trap was perfect, legal, airtight. Caleb sat back down, opened the journal again, read Sarah's last entry one more time. Then he turned to a blank page in the back, found a pencil, started making a list of every name she'd written, every death, every property, every date. If the law wouldn't listen, maybe someone else would. He just had to figure out who. Outside, snow began to fall again. Inside, the fire burned down to embers. And somewhere in the dark, a little girl with a rattling cough lay in a bed that smelled like medicine and fear. Morning came gray and cold. Caleb fed the cattle, mended a fence post, split wood until his shoulders ached. Work kept his hands busy, didn't help his mind. He was measuring oats when Hoofbeats approached, Doc Esther's mare. She dismounted before the horse stopped, medical bag in hand. Need to talk. Caleb set down the scoop. Coffee's hot. They sat at the kitchen table. Doc's hands wrapped around the cup like she was trying to steal its warmth. Her eyes looked older than they had yesterday. My husband died 5 years ago, she said. November. Fever, I said. Quick and brutal. He was 43, strong, never sick a day in his life. Caleb waited. We had a homestead, 20 acres near Hargrove's land, good water. He'd been talking about buying more cattle. Then he got sick. She stared into the coffee. 3 days later, he was dead. Week after that, I got an offer. Silas Hargrove, $50 for the whole property. You sell? I did. I couldn't think. Couldn't farm alone. Needed money for medical school debts. Her voice dropped. It's worth $300 now, maybe more. Caleb pulled the journal from his coat pocket, slid it across the table. Doc opened it, read. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. He killed them, she whispered. All of them, including, her voice broke, including your husband. She closed the journal carefully, set it down like it might shatter. When she looked up, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. What do you need? Evidence, real evidence, not just a dead woman's diary. Doc reached into her medical bag, pulled out a small glass vial in a leather case. Arsenic test kit. Takes 30 minutes. If there's poison in water, this solution turns yellow. You test it, Hargrove will know. He already knows. Doc's smile was bitter. Difference is now I know too, and I'm not a grieving widow anymore. I'm a physician with access to every property he sold. Caleb studied her. This won't bring your husband back. No, but it might save that little girl. They sat in silence. Wind rattled the windows. Cattle lowed in the distance. Finally, Doc stood. I'll test the wells, quietly. You figure out how to get to Mercy. Barlow said, Barlow's a good man in a bad position. Hargrove holds half the town's loans, sheriff included. She paused at the door. But laws can't stop you from riding past a house. Can't stop you from noticing things. Can't stop a child from looking out a window. She left before Caleb could answer. 2 nights later, Caleb rode past Hargrove's house. 3 stories, white paint, iron fence, lamplight in every window except one, second floor, corner room, dark. He circled back an hour later, still dark. 3rd time, past midnight, he saw movement, small shadow against the glass, then gone. 4th night, he brought his horse to a walk directly across from that window, counted to 30, turned to leave, a flash of white, paper pressed against the glass. He reined in, squinted, drawing, child's hand, 3 stick figures, 2 tall, 1 small, location unclear, but one figure had long hair, woman. The paper disappeared, reappeared, this time with words, shaky letters, rain barrel. Caleb's breath caught. The paper vanished. Curtain fell, window went dark. He rode away slowly, didn't look back, but he felt the weight of that message like a brand. Telegraph office was above Ruby Chin's saloon. Caleb climbed the back stairs just before dawn, knocked twice. Ruby answered in a silk robe, hair down, cigarette between her fingers. She was 50-something, sharp-eyed, Chinese mother and Irish father, and ran half the information in 3 counties. Caleb Thornwood, didn't know you remembered where I lived. Need a favor. Everyone does. She stepped aside. Let him in. The room smelled like tobacco and ink. Telegraph machine sat silent in the corner, maps covered one wall, notes pinned everywhere. Ruby poured 2 whiskeys, handed him one. Sarah Kellerman was my friend. Caleb's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Taught her Morse code, just basics, enough to send messages nobody else could read. Ruby walked to a drawer, pulled out a stack of telegraph slips. She sent these over 6 weeks, coded, about Silas. She spread them on the table. Caleb read, brother buying land, fever deaths, pattern, tested water, arsenic, need proof. He knows, scared. Mercy not safe. If something happens. The last message was incomplete. Date, 3 weeks ago. Same day Sarah's journal ended. Where is she? Caleb asked. Don't know, but I know she didn't run. Ruby tapped ash from her cigarette. Sarah loved that girl more than breath. She wouldn't leave, not willingly. Then she's dead. Probably. Ruby's voice was flat, matter of fact. Question is, can we prove it before he kills Mercy too? Caleb told her about the journal, the wells, Doc's test, the window message. Ruby listened, smoked, thought. You need more than water tests in a dead woman's diary. You need witnesses. You need the town to care. She stubbed out the cigarette. And right now the town's scared. Hargrove holds their leashes. So what do I do? Ruby smiled. It wasn't kind. You make him arrogant. You make him think he's won, and you wait for him to slip. I've got 90 days before I lose the ranch. Then we'd better work fast. She walked to the telegraph machine, started typing. Caleb watched the keys click. Who are you messaging? County Records Office. Land surveys, death certificates. I want dates, names, every transaction Hargrove's made in 3 years. She looked up. If there's a pattern, paper trails don't lie. And if there's not, then we find another way. Ruby's fingers flew over the keys. Because I made Sarah a promise. And I don't break promises. Not to friends. Not to the dead. The machine clattered, clicked, went silent. Ruby pulled the confirmation slip, folded it, handed it to Caleb. Go home. Feed your cattle. Act normal. In 3 days, I'll have answers. Caleb stood, hesitated. Why are you helping? Ruby lit another cigarette, stared at the maps on her wall. Because I'm tired of burying friends. 3 days later, Dalkio. Esther arrived at dawn with a leather satchel and a face like thunder. Found it, she said. No greeting, no preamble. Caleb set down the bucket of milk. Found what? Arsenic, in the well water, every property Hargrove bought in the last 3 years. She pulled out a notebook, flipped it open. Tested 12 sites, 12 positive results, levels high enough to cause chronic illness, death within months. Caleb's chest tightened. You got samples? Bottled and labeled, locked in my office. She met his eyes. This is murder, Caleb. Mass murder, and we can prove it. We need to tell Barlow. Already did. The words hit like cold water. What? Went to him this morning, showed him everything, the test results, the journal, Ruby's telegraph records. Doc's voice went flat. He thanked me for my diligence, said he'd look into it, then he told me to keep it quiet until he could verify the findings. Verify how? He didn't say, but Hargrove was in his office when I left. Silence, the kind that presses on your ears. Caleb grabbed his coat. I'm going to town. Wait, Doc caught his arm. There's more. Hargrove's hosting a church dinner tonight, charity event. He's donating $200 to the mission fund. So he's bringing Mercy, showing her off, new dress, clean hair, the whole town will be there. Doc's grip tightened. He's making a play, Caleb, showing everyone what a good guardian he is, making you look like the dangerous one. Caleb pulled free, didn't answer, mounted his horse and rode. Town square was busy. Saturday, market day. Caleb hitched his horse outside the sheriff's office and went in. Barlow sat at his desk, papers spread before him. He looked up, sighed. Caleb, Doc showed you proof. She showed me test results in a diary. That's evidence of contaminated wells, not of murder. Barlow stood, walked to the window. You know how many wells get fouled out here? Mining runoff, natural deposits. Hell, half the creek water in this territory has trace metals. Not at these levels. Maybe, maybe not. I'm no chemist. Barlow turned. His face showed strain. Look, I sent a telegram to the territorial marshal. Asked for an investigator. That's procedure. Until then, my hands are tied. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. That girl doesn't have 3 weeks. You a doctor now? Caleb stepped closer. You know what's happening. You know Hargrove is dirty. I know a lot of things. Knowing isn't proof. Barlow's voice dropped. And even if it was, you think a judge will side with us over him. Hargrove built half this town. He employs 1/3 of the people here. He's got lawyers in Helena and friends in Washington. And you've got a badge. A tin star and a salary he could cancel tomorrow. Barlow's jaw worked. I've got a wife, 3 kids. If I move wrong on this, we're done. Finished. So, yeah, I'm being careful. Sue me for wanting to feed my family. Caleb stared at him, saw the fear, the calculation, the cowardice dressed up as prudence. Sarah Kellerman had a family too. He walked out before Barlow could answer. The church dinner started at 6. Caleb stood across the street in the shadows watching people arrive. Families, merchants, ranch hands in clean shirts, everyone smiling, everyone pretending. Hargrove arrived last. Carriage, driver, and Mercy. She wore a blue dress, too big, hair brushed and pinned, face pale but clean. She walked beside Hargrove with her hand in his, small and fragile and utterly trapped. Caleb's hand went to his gun, stayed there. The crowd parted for Hargrove. Men tipped hats, women smiled. Father Miguel stood on the church steps welcoming them in. His face was tight, but his voice was warm. Hargrove paused at the top step, turned to the crowd, raised his voice. Friends, neighbors. Tonight we gather in gratitude and fellowship. I'm honored to contribute to the mission fund. $200 to help those less fortunate. Applause, scattered, polite. And I'm blessed have my niece Mercy home with me, safe and healthy, after her mother's tragic abandonment. He squeezed her hand. She flinched. He smiled. We must pray for Sarah. Wherever she is, whatever darkness led her to leave this innocent child alone in the cold. More applause, louder now. Caleb watched Mercy's face, saw her eyes scan the crowd, searching. They found him. For 1 second their gazes locked. Her lips moved, no sound, but he read the words, rain barrel. Then Hargrove pulled her inside. The door closed. Caleb turned to leave. Wait. He spun. Doc Esther stepped from the alley beside him, Ruby Chen with her. We heard, Ruby said. Her voice was ice. Barlow told you to wait for the marshal. He told me the truth. He's bought. No, Doc shook her head. He's scared. There's a difference. Fear we can work with, corruption we can't. Then what do you want me to do? Stand here while Hargrove parades that girl around like a trophy? Ruby pulled a folded paper from her coat, handed it to him. County records came through. Look at the dates. Caleb unfolded it. List of names, properties, death dates, sale dates, and at the bottom, in Ruby's handwriting, 3 death certificates signed by Hargrove before the person died. His blood stopped. He forged them, Ruby said. Signed as a witness to deaths that hadn't happened yet. Probably planned to backdate. Got sloppy. Where did you... Father Miguel has access to the church registry. Births, deaths, marriages, all recorded. Ruby's smile was sharp. Turns out he's been uncomfortable with Hargrove's donations for months. When I showed him what we found, he opened the books. Caleb looked at Doc. You said Barlow won't move without the marshal. He won't, but the town might, if they see proof, if they understand what's at stake. Doc gestured toward the church. That dinner goes for 3 hours. Every rancher, every merchant, every family with land will be in that room, captive audience. You want me to storm a church dinner and accuse Hargrove? No, Ruby said. I want you to stay quiet. Let Hargrove talk. Let him play the benevolent uncle. And then when he's feeling safe, when he thinks he's won. The church door opened. Hargrove stepped out, alone, lit a cigar, stretched. His eyes found Caleb across the street. For a moment, neither moved. Then Hargrove smiled, took a long pull on the cigar, blew smoke toward the skew. He called out, voice loud enough to carry. Thornwood, good of you to come, though you weren't invited. Pause. I heard about your loan. 90 days. That's hard. If you need advice on selling cattle, I'd be happy to help. Professional courtesy. Caleb said nothing. Or maybe you're here about the girl. Still worried, are you? Hargrove's smile widened. Don't be. She's thriving. She's eating well, sleeping through the night, doesn't ask about her mother anymore. Children adapt. It's remarkable. Doc's hand touched Caleb's arm. Warning, he shook it off, stepped into the street, boot heels on frozen dirt. You killed them, he said. Quiet, steady. Hargrove laughed. Killed who? 15 families, poisoned their wells, bought their land cheap after they died. The laughter stopped. Hargrove's eyes went cold. That's slander, Thornwood. Dangerous slander. I'd be careful. Got proof. Do you? Hargrove flicked ash from his cigar. Because Sheriff Barlow seems to think you've got a grieving man's paranoia and a lot of baseless accusations. The whole town thinks that. And after tonight, after they see how well Mercy's doing under my care, they'll think you're not just paranoid. They'll think you're dangerous. He took another pull, exhaled slow. You should go home, Caleb. Feed your cattle. Enjoy your ranch while you still have it, because in 90 days, it'll be mine too. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. He turned, walked back inside. Door closed. The street went quiet. Ruby stepped beside Caleb. He just made a mistake. What mistake? He threatened you, publicly, in front of witnesses. She looked at Doc, at the church, at the windows where faces pressed against glass, watching. And now we know he's worried. Worried men get sloppy. Doc nodded. The dinner ends at 9. Father Miguel speaks at 8:30. He's going to mention the church records, not directly, but enough. Enough to plant seeds. And then we wait for Hargrove to panic. And when he does, Ruby's smile returned. We'll be ready. Caleb looked at the church, at the light, at the shadow of a small girl visible through one window, sitting alone at a table while adults laughed around her. 87 days left, one child dying, one man untouchable. And somewhere in the dark, Sarah Kellerman's body lay undiscovered, her final warning unheeded. He turned away, mounted his horse, rode home through cold that bit deeper than wind. Behind him, inside the church, Hargrove raised his glass in a toast. The town drank with him, and a 7-year-old girl stared at her plate and wondered if anyone was coming. Caleb visited Martha's grave at dawn. Snow had drifted against the wooden marker. He cleared it with his bare hands, ice burning his fingers. Failed again, he said to the frozen ground. Got evidence, got witnesses, don't matter. Law's his, town's his, everything's his. Wind answered, nothing else. He sat on the cold earth, thought about the ranch, about $800 he didn't have, about a little girl in a blue dress, mouthing words through glass. Hoofbeats approached. He didn't turn. Old Dutch climbed down from his wagon, joints creaking. 70-something, back bent from decades at the forge, hands scarred from hot metal. He'd shoed Caleb's first horse, had taught him to shoe his own. Dutch sat beside him without asking, pulled a flask, took a drink, offered it. Caleb shook his head. Heard about the dinner, Dutch said. Everyone heard? Heard what you said to Hargrove, about the poisoning. That too. Dutch took another drink, screwed the cap back on. My son lost his farm 2 years ago, Fever took his wife, then him, left 3 kids orphaned. Hargrove bought the property for $90, sold it 6 months later for $400. Caleb looked at him. Didn't think much of it then. Tragedy happens. Land changes hands. Dutch's voice was rough. But now I'm thinking, wondering, about that fever, about the water. You're not the only one. No, I'm not. Dutch stood, brushed snow from his pants. Spring branding's in 6 weeks. You still planning to do it? If I still have a ranch. You will. Bank can't take it before 90 days. Law's clear on that much. Dutch paused. Branding's a public thing. Whole territory comes. Neighbors help. It's tradition. Even a banker can't stop tradition. Caleb stood. What are you saying? I'm saying a man's got a right to work his own cattle. And if folks happen to gather, if conversations happen while irons heat and calves get marked. Dutch shrugged. Well, that's just community. Can't legislate against community. He climbed back into his wagon, paused. Your daddy built that ranch with his hands, your granddaddy before him. Don't let some paper-pushing bastard take it without a fight. He snapped the reins. 6 weeks. I'll bring my sons. We'll help with the branding. The wagon rolled away. Caleb stood alone among the graves, looked at Martha's marker, then at the small stone beside it. Rose, 3 days old when winter took her. 6 weeks, he said to them, if I last that long. That night, Doc, Ruby, and Father Miguel gathered at Caleb's table. Lamplight threw shadows on the walls. Outside, February wind howled. Father Miguel spread the church registry open, pages yellowed with age, ink faded but readable. 3 certificates, he said. His voice carried the weight of confession. Thomas Brennan, certificate dated October 2nd, signed by Silas Hargrove as witness, but according to my records, Tom didn't die until October 3rd. Ruby leaned in. 1 day off. Could be a mistake. Could be, except... Father Miguel turned pages. Mary Chen's husband. Certificate dated October 18th. Death recorded October 19th. And the third? Doc asked. Joseph Kowalski. Certificate dated November 1st. Death November 2nd. Father Miguel closed the book. His hands trembled. 3 certificates, 3 dates wrong, all signed by the same man. Silence filled the room like smoke. He knew they were going to die, Caleb said. Signed the papers in advance. Probably meant to backdate them. Got sloppy. Or arrogant, Ruby said. Thought no one would check, thought no one would care. Doc pulled out her notebook. I've got the arsenic results, you've got the certificates. Ruby's got Sarah's telegrams, that's 3 independent sources all pointing to the same man. It's enough for an arrest, Father Miguel said. Is it? Caleb looked at him. You willing to testify? In court? Against Hargrove? The priest's face paled. The church, my position, if I'm wrong, you're not wrong. But if the judge thinks I am, if Hargrove's lawyers twist it, if the town turns, he swallowed. I could lose everything, the mission, the trust, my calling. Sarah lost more, Ruby said quietly. Father Miguel flinched, looked down at the registry, at the names written there. Births, deaths, marriages, the sacred record of lives lived and ended. I need time, he whispered, to pray, to be certain. Time's what we don't have, Doc said. Then give me until the branding. Father Miguel met Caleb's eyes. 6 weeks. If we're going to move, we need the town behind us. And the town won't move unless they see, unless they understand. The branding brings everyone together. Neutral ground. If we present the evidence there, it's not a courtroom, Caleb said. No, it's better. It's community, and community can do what courts can't. Father Miguel closed the registry. I'll testify. I'll show them the certificates, but not before, not until the moment is right. Doc nodded slowly. The branding gives us time to prepare, to gather more evidence, to make sure we don't miss anything. Ruby lit a cigarette. And it gives Hargrove time to make another mistake. He's scared now. I can feel it. Scared men do stupid things. Caleb looked at each of them, at the priest who risked his calling, at the doctor who risked her practice, at the telegraph operator who risked Hargrove's wrath. Why? He asked. Why are you all doing this? Doc spoke first. Because I want to know my husband's death meant something. Ruby exhaled smoke. Because I made a promise to a friend. Father Miguel touched the registry. Because these names deserve justice, and because a child deserves to live. They sat in silence. The lamp flickered. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. But inside, something small and fragile began to grow. Hope, not the wild kind, not the reckless kind, the quiet kind, the kind built on shared risk and common purpose and the belief that maybe, just maybe, right could still win. Caleb stood, pulled 4 cups from the shelf, poured coffee. 6 weeks, he said. He said. We make it count. They drank, made plans, and when they left, near midnight, Caleb stood on his porch and watched them ride away. 6 weeks to save a ranch, 6 weeks to expose a killer, 6 weeks to prove that law and justice weren't always the same thing. He looked toward town, toward the big house on the hill where lights still burned. Somewhere in that house, a little girl slept, or didn't. And somewhere in the dark, her mother's body waited to be found. 4 weeks passed. March came cold and wet, snow turning to slush, mud sucking at wagon wheels. Caleb worked the ranch, prepared for branding, and watched Hargrove's house whenever he rode to town. The windows stayed dark, no sign of mercy. Then on a gray Thursday, Ruby arrived at the ranch with news. Hargrove's hosting another event, Sunday, church charity luncheon. She dismounted, boots sinking into mud. He's bringing Mercy again, showing her off. Caleb's jaw tightened. Why? Because it works. Town sees her in nice dresses, clean and fed, sitting quietly beside him. They think, look how well she's doing. Look what a good man he is. Ruby's voice dripped acid. Meanwhile, they're calling you obsessed, dangerous. Some are saying you should be locked up for your own good. Let them talk. Talk becomes action, Caleb. Hargrove's not just defending himself anymore. He's attacking, making you the villain so no one questions him. Doc rode up behind Ruby, medical bag strapped to her saddle. There's more. I ran tests on 3 more wells, all positive for arsenic, but when I tried to report it to Barlow, he told me to stop. Stop testing? Stop investigating. Said I was overstepping. Said if I continued without official authorization, he'd have to cite me for interfering with a pending inquiry. Doc's face was stone. There is no pending inquiry. The marshal never responded. Hargrove got to him first. Caleb turned away, stared at his fence line. Cattle grazed beyond it, oblivious. So we're alone. Not entirely. Ruby pulled a telegram from her coat. I've been sending inquiries to every newspaper within 200 miles. Most ignored me, but one editor in Butte is interested, wants to send a reporter. If we can give him a story, proof, witnesses, evidence, he'll print it. When? 2 weeks, right before your branding. Ruby's smile was thin. Hargrove can control this town. Can't control the whole territory. Once the story breaks, the marshal will have to move. Public pressure. Doc nodded. It's our best shot. Maybe our only shot. And if the reporter doesn't come? If the marshal still does nothing? No one answered. Sunday arrived. Caleb watched from across the street as carriages pulled up to the church. Families in their best clothes. Children scrubbed clean. Men in pressed shirts. Women in good dresses. And Hargrove, arriving last as always. Carriage polished. Driver uniformed. And beside him, Mercy. She wore yellow this time. Bright against the gray day. Hair in ringlets. Face pale but composed. She walked with her hand in Hargrove's, small and proper and utterly still. The crowd parted, smiled, nodded approval. Hargrove paused on the church steps, raised his voice. Friends, before we go in, I wanted to share wonderful news. My niece Mercy has been making remarkable progress. Doc Whitmore examined her last week. Completely healthy now. The pneumonia's gone. She's gaining weight, sleeping well. He squeezed her hand. She didn't react. I know there have been concerns, rumors, unfounded accusations from troubled individuals. His eyes swept the crowd, landed briefly on Caleb. But as you can see, Mercy is thriving. She's happy. She's home. And I'm grateful to all of you for your support during this difficult time. Applause, warm, genuine. Caleb's hands clenched. Then Mercy moved. Just slightly. Her free hand rose, pressed against the window of the church door behind her, 5 fingers spread wide, and her lips moved, silent but clear, rain barrel. Caleb took a step forward. Doc's hand caught his arm. Wait. She's telling us, I know, but not here, not now. Doc's grip tightened. Look. Hargrove had noticed. His smile never wavered, but his hand on Mercy's wrist shifted, tightened. She flinched. He pulled her inside. Door closed. The crowd followed. Within minutes, the street was empty. Caleb stood alone. Rain began to fall, cold, thin, smelling of mud and rotting snow. "Rain barrel," he said to no one. "She keeps saying it." Doc stepped beside him. "Sarah's journal mentioned it. The powder is in the rain barrel, but Hargrove's had weeks to get rid of evidence. It's probably gone. Or it's still there, hidden in plain sight." Caleb looked at the big house on the hill. He's arrogant, thinks he's untouchable. Maybe he didn't bother. "You can't break into his house." "I'm not breaking in. I'm checking a rain barrel, on public property. Anyone can walk past a house." Ruby appeared from the alley. "Actually, no. Hargrove filed a restraining petition yesterday. Sheriff served it this morning. You're not allowed within 50 yards of his property." Caleb turned. "What?" "Says you've been harassing him, stalking his residence, making threats. Judge granted a temporary order. Violation means jail." Ruby's face was grim. "He's boxing you in, legally. Can't touch him, can't get near the girl, can't investigate. He's got every angle covered." "Then how—" "I can," Doc said quietly. They both looked at her. "The order's against Caleb. Not me. I'm Mercy's physician. I have medical authority to check on her welfare." Doc's voice was calm, clinical. "If I happen to notice a rain barrel during a house call, if I happen to take a sample for public health reasons, that's not breaking any laws. That's due diligence." Ruby grinned. "You devious woman." "I prefer thorough." Doc pulled on her gloves. "I'll go Tuesday, midday. Hargrove's at the bank Tuesday afternoons, regular as clockwork." "He'll know it was you," Caleb said. "Let him. What's he gonna do? Fire his niece's doctor? That'll look suspicious." Doc's eyes were hard. "I'm tired of being careful. Tired of letting him win because we're afraid. Sarah wasn't afraid, and look what it cost her." She mounted her horse. 2 days. I'll get the sample. Ruby, you make sure that reporter's coming. Father Miguel, you keep the registry safe. Caleb," she looked down at him, "you stay alive until the branding. Don't give Hargrove an excuse. Don't do anything stupid." "Define stupid." Anything that ends with you in jail or dead." She kicked her horse into motion. 2 weeks, we expose him in front of everyone, and then we let the territory decide if it wants justice or just more graves. She rode away. Ruby followed. Caleb stood in the rain, staring at Hargrove's house. At the rain barrel visible beside the back door, green wood, iron bands, lid slightly askew, the powder is in the rain barrel. A 7-year-old girl had risked everything to tell him, twice. He turned, walked to his horse, rode home through mud that smelled like spring coming and winter dying. 2 weeks. Then everything would break open, or everything would end. Tuesday came. Doc rode to Hargrove's house at 2 in the afternoon. Caleb watched from the ridge above town, spyglass in hand. She dismounted, knocked. A housekeeper answered. Conversation. Doc showed papers. The housekeeper let her in. 20 minutes. 30. Caleb's hands sweated despite the cold. 40 minutes. The door opened. Doc emerged, medical bag in hand. She mounted, rode away at a normal pace. Not hurried, not slow. She didn't look toward the ridge, didn't signal, just rode. Caleb waited another hour, then rode down the back way to Doc's office. She was testing the sample when he arrived. Vial of water on her desk, test solution dripping in. Her face was pale. The liquid turned bright yellow. "Arsenic," she whispered. "High concentration. Enough to kill a grown man in weeks, a child in days." Caleb stared at the vial. He's still using it. Or he kept it, evidence of his method. Maybe he's too arrogant to think anyone would look. Doc corked the vial, labeled it. "This is proof, Caleb. Direct proof. Not circumstantial, not theory. This is poison in his rain barrel, just like Sarah said. We take this to Barlow, and he'll say we contaminated it, that we planted it, that we're desperate." Doc's voice was bitter. "We need more than this. We need someone who will testify they saw him use it. We need—" The door burst open. Father Miguel stumbled in, face white, hands shaking, blood on his sleeve. Doc was on her feet instantly. "What happened?" "Hargrove knows," Miguel's voice cracked. "He knows about the registry, about the certificates." Caleb grabbed him. "How?" "I don't know, but he came to the mission an hour ago. Said the church needs to be more careful with its records. Said mistakes can be corrected. Said if I valued my position, I'd remember that memory is fallible. Miguel's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then he showed me a new copy of Thomas Brennan's death certificate. Dated correctly, October 3rd, not the 2nd. Perfect. Legal. Doc's face went ashen. He forged new ones. Or he has someone who can. A clerk, a judge, someone with access. Miguel sank into a chair. The evidence is gone. The original certificates, he must have replaced them in the county records too. Everything we found, everything we documented, it's like it never existed. Caleb turned away, slammed his fist into the wall, plaster cracked. Easy, Doc said. Easy, he spun. He just erased everything. We had proof. We had witnesses. We still have the water sample, Doc said. And we still have Sarah's journal. And we still have a dead woman's diary and a vial that could have come from anywhere. Caleb's voice was raw. He wins. Again. Always. Silence. Father Miguel looked up. Blood had soaked through his sleeve. Doc noticed. You're hurt. It's nothing. I felt it. You fell or someone pushed you? Doc's voice went cold. She rolled up his sleeve. Bruises, dark, fresh, fingerprints clear on his upper arm. He grabbed you, Caleb said. Miguel said nothing. Did he threaten you? He didn't have to. The bruises were threat enough. Miguel's voice broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't testify. Can't risk the mission. Can't risk your life, Doc finished quietly. You're scared he'll kill you. Aren't you? The question hung in the air. Doc sat down, looked at the vial on her desk, at the journal Ruby had brought, at Father Miguel's bruised arm. Yes, she said finally. I'm terrified. He's killed at least 15 people. Maybe more. He's manipulated the law, the town, the church. He's got money, power, and no conscience. She looked up, met Caleb's eyes. And we're 3 people with theories and a water sample? So we quit, Caleb said, flat, dead. I didn't say that. Then what? Doc stood, walked to the window, looked toward Hargrove's house. We stopped playing by his rules, stopped trying to work through sheriffs and marshals and judges he owns. We go to the people, directly. The branding, Ruby said from the doorway. They turned. She stood there, mud on her boots, telegram in hand. Reporters coming, day before the branding, wants interviews, wants to see the evidence, wants to tour the properties. Ruby's smile was sharp. Hargrove can forge certificates, can threaten priests, can buy sheriffs, but he can't buy every newspaper in Montana Territory, not yet. One reporter, Father Miguel said, against Hargrove's empire. One reporter who'll print the truth, who'll get it into every mining camp, every ranch, every town from here to the border. Ruby walked to the desk, looked at the vial. This gets published, territorial governor will have to act. Federal marshals will have to come. Hargrove's lawyers can't fight the whole country. Caleb looked at Doc, at Father Miguel, at Ruby. And if they do nothing, if the story gets buried, then at least we tried, Doc said. And at least people will know. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually the truth gets out. It always does. Question is whether we're brave enough to tell it. Miguel touched his bruised arm, winced. Then slowly, painfully, he nodded. I'll testify. At the branding. In front of the reporter, in front of the town. His voice steadied. If I'm going to die for this, I'd rather die telling the truth than live hiding it. Doc gripped his shoulder. You're not going to die. Neither is Mercy, Caleb said. He grabbed his coat. I'm going to get her. Caleb, no. The restraining order expires the day of the branding. That's 8 days. For 8 days, she's alone in that house with him. With his poison. With his lies. He looked at them. I'm not waiting for reporters or marshals or miracles. I'm getting her out. Tonight. That's kidnapping, Father Miguel said. It's rescue. The law won't see it that way. Then the law's blind. Caleb opened the door. Cold air rushed in. You want to help? Be at my ranch at midnight. Bring horses. Bring whatever you need. We're done asking permission to do what's right. He walked out into the dusk. Behind him, the 3 of them stood in silence. Finally, Ruby stubbed out her cigarette. Well, she said, I always wanted to be an outlaw. Doc grabbed her medical bag. Father Miguel pulled on his coat, and 3 unlikely conspirators rode into the falling dark to help a broken man do one unforgivable thing, save a child. Midnight. 4 horses stood in Caleb's yard, breath steaming in cold air. Doc Esther checked her medical supplies. Ruby Chen loaded a rifle. Father Miguel prayed quietly, rosary beads clicking. Caleb emerged from the cabin, gun belt strapped on. Last chance to walk away. No one moved. All right then. He swung into the saddle. Doc, you and Miguel come with me. Ruby, you stay at the road. Anyone comes, you fire twice. We hear that, we scatter. Ruby nodded. And if Hargrove's there, then we're all going to jail. Caleb kicked his horse forward. Let's ride. They moved through darkness, hoofbeats muffled by mud. The town slept. No lights, except the saloon, dying embers visible through dirty windows. Hargrove's house loomed on the hill, dark, silent, only one lamp burning, ground floor, back corner. Caleb dismounted 100 yards out. The others followed. They crept forward on foot, mud sucking at their boots. Doc touched his arm, pointed, kitchen window, lamp visible inside. And a shadow moving. Someone was awake. Caleb signaled. They split up. Doc and Miguel circled to the back. Caleb moved to the side of the house, pressed against cold clapboard. A window, second floor, dark. He picked up a small stone, tossed it. It clinked against glass. Nothing. Another stone. Clink. The curtain moved. A small face appeared. Mercy. Her eyes went wide. She pressed her palm to the glass. Caleb pointed down, mouthed, "Open the back door." She shook her head, pointed to her own chest, then down. Mouthed something he couldn't read. He tried again. Back door. She shook her head harder. Then she pointed behind her, towards something in the room. Her hand moved, turning an invisible key, locked in. Caleb's blood went cold. Mercy's face pressed to the glass. She was crying. Silent tears. Her breath fogged the window. Then she stepped back, picked something up, pressed it to the glass. A drawing. 3 figures, 1 tall man, 1 small girl, 1 woman lying down, arms crossed, and at the bottom in shaky letters, "Help." Footsteps inside. Heavy. Male. Mercy's face vanished. The drawing disappeared. Curtain fell. Caleb heard a door open. A man's voice. Hargrove. "Why are you awake?" "I heard something." Mercy's voice. Small. Careful. "Get back in bed." "I'm thirsty. There's water in the pitcher." "It tastes funny." Silence. Then, "Drink it anyway." "It makes my stomach hurt." "You're being difficult." Hargrove's voice hardened. "Your mother was difficult. Look where that got her." Caleb moved, around the house, found Doc and Father Miguel crouched by the back door. "She's locked in," he whispered. "Second floor, can't get her out without breaking in." "Then we break in," Doc said. "And we're arrested for breaking and entering, lose everything." Father Miguel looked up. "The cellar. Old houses like this, they have outside cellar doors. Leads to the kitchen usually." They found it. Wooden doors set into the ground, rusty hinges. Caleb pulled, locked. He drew his knife, worked the latch, metal scraped, the lock gave. He eased the door open, darkness below, stairs descending. They went down, one at a time, into cold that smelled like earth and potatoes and mildew. Above them, floorboards creaked. Hargrove was moving around. The cellar stairs led up to a door, kitchen door. Caleb tested it. Unlocked. He pushed it open an inch. Lamplight spilled through. Empty kitchen, lamp on the table. Half-full glass of water beside it. Hargrove's voice came from somewhere deeper in the house. "Go to sleep, Mercy. I won't tell you again." "Yes, sir." A door closed. Lock clicked. Footsteps descended stairs. Hargrove appeared in the kitchen. He wore a nightshirt, suspenders loose. He walked to the lamp, reached to extinguish it, stopped, turned, looked directly at the cellar door. Caleb froze, hand on his gun. Hargrove walked toward the door, slowly, his face unreadable. He reached for the handle. The front door slammed open. "Fire!" A man's voice. Panicked. "Mr. Hargrove, the bank's on fire!" Hargrove spun. "What?" "The bank. Someone torched it. Whole front's burning." Hargrove swore, grabbed his coat, ran for the front door. "Get the volunteers. Ring the bell." Footsteps pounded. The front door slammed. Voices shouted outside. A bell began ringing. The fire bell. Caleb pushed through the cellar door. Doc and Miguel followed. "Go," Doc said. I'll get the girl. You two get out." "Not leaving without her," Caleb said. He took the stairs 3 at a time. Second floor, 3 doors. First, empty. Second, storage. Third, locked. "Mercy!" "Caleb?" Her voice, frightened, hopeful. He tried the door. Solid. Good lock. Stand back, he kicked. Once. Twice. The frame splintered. Third kick and the door burst open. Mercy stood in the corner, nightgown too big, bare feet on cold floor. She looked at him, at Doc behind him, at Father Miguel. Then she ran, straight to Caleb, wrapped her arms around his waist and held on like she was drowning. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. "I knew it." He lifted her. She was lighter than she should be. He could feel her ribs. "We're leaving. He'll find me. Not where we're going." They ran down the stairs, through the kitchen. Doc grabbed the glass of water from the table, sniffed it. "Arsenic," she said. "Fresh dose." Father Miguel's face went white. "He's still poisoning her." "Not anymore." Caleb carried Mercy through the cellar, up the outside stairs, into the night. Ruby was waiting with the horses. She took one look at Mercy and her face crumpled. "Get her on my horse," she said. "I'll ride double with Miguel." They mounted. Behind them, the town was waking, shouts, bells, orange glow against the sky. "The fire," Father Miguel started. "Wasn't us," Ruby said. She smiled. "But I might have mentioned to Old Dutch where Hargrove's financial records were kept, and Dutch might have had sons who owed Hargrove money they couldn't pay, and those sons might have been drinking tonight. Coincidences happen." They rode, fast, through mud and darkness, away from the burning bank and the waking town and the house where a little girl had been slowly dying. Dawn broke cold and clear. They reached Caleb's ranch as the sun touched the mountains. Inside, Doc examined Mercy, listened to her lungs, looked in her mouth, felt her pulse. "Pneumonia's back. Mild, but it's there. Arsenic poisoning, chronic exposure. She needs rest, clean water, medicine." Doc looked at Caleb. "And she needs safety. Hargrove will come for her." "Let him try." Ruby was already at the window. "He's coming, now. Sheriff with him. 4 deputies." Caleb looked down at Mercy. She sat wrapped in a blanket, holding a cup of clean water. Her eyes were clearer than he'd seen them, brighter. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we tell the truth," he said. Hoofbeats outside, doors slamming, boots on the porch. "Thornwood, come out, you're under arrest." Caleb looked at Doc, at Ruby, at Father Miguel, at the little girl who'd trusted him to come. "Ready?" he asked. Doc pulled out the water sample. Father Miguel touched the church registry he'd brought. Ruby loaded her rifle. "Ready," they said. Caleb opened the door. Hargrove stood behind Sheriff Barlow, face twisted with rage. "You kidnapped my niece. I rescued her. That's not your decision to make." "Someone had to." Caleb stepped onto the porch. Behind him, Mercy appeared in the doorway. Small, fragile, alive. The crowd that had gathered went silent. Hargrove pointed at her. "See? She's fine. Healthy. This man is delusional." "I have arsenic poisoning," Mercy said. Her voice was small, but in the morning quiet it carried. "My uncle puts powder in the water. He did it to Mama. He did it to me." She looked at Hargrove. "And when Mama found out, he killed her." Gasps. Murmurs. The crowd shifted. "That's a lie," Hargrove said. "The child is confused." "I saw you," Mercy said. "I saw you put it in the rain barrel, and I heard you tell Mama that if she told anyone, I'd disappear too." The crowd noise grew, angry, questioning. Father Miguel stepped forward, held up the registry. "I have church records, death certificates signed by Silas Hargrove before people died, original dates, before he forged new ones." Doc raised the vial. "I have water from his rain barrel, tested positive for arsenic, concentration high enough to kill." Ruby stepped beside them. "And I have coded telegrams from Sarah Kellerman, documenting everything, sent before she disappeared." Sheriff Barlow looked at Hargrove, at the evidence, at the crowd. "Silas Hargrove," he said slowly. "You're under arrest for—" "You have no authority," Hargrove's voice cracked. "These people are liars, conspirators. This is a what?" Old Dutch pushed through the crowd, his sons behind him. "My son died on your land, his wife, his kids. You bought their farm for nothing." More voices, more families, people Caleb hadn't known were listening, hadn't known were keeping track. "My husband, my brother, my daughter." The names piled up like stones, each one a death, each one a property, each one leading back to Hargrove. The banker's face went white, then red, then he turned and ran, made it 10 feet before Old Dutch's sons caught him, dragged him back. Sheriff Barlow clicked handcuffs on. For the record, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder, multiple counts, and attempted murder of a child. He looked at Caleb. You're not off the hook either. Kidnapping charges. Emergency rescue, Doc interrupted. I'm her physician. I authorize the removal due to immediate medical danger. Barlow's mouth twitched, almost a smile. We'll sort it out, but for now, he looked at Mercy. The girl stays here, under medical supervision, until the territorial judge arrives. He hauled Hargrove toward his horse. The banker was screaming now. Threats, bribes, promises of ruin. No one listened. The crowd began to disperse. Slowly, quietly. Some touched Caleb's shoulder as they passed. Others nodded. Old Dutch gripped his hand. Branding's this weekend, Dutch said. We'll be there. Might not have a ranch by then. You'll have a ranch, and you'll have neighbors, real ones. Dutch looked at Mercy. And you'll have family. He walked away. Caleb turned. Mercy stood in the doorway, wrapped in the blanket. Behind her, Doc and Ruby and Father Miguel. Is it over? Mercy asked. Not yet, Caleb said, but we're getting there. She smiled, small, tired, real, and for the first time in 3 years, Caleb felt something he'd thought was dead. Hope. The territorial judge arrived 3 days later. Silver hair, hard eyes, reputation for fairness that made lawyers nervous and criminals desperate. He held the hearing in the church, only building big enough for the crowd. Caleb sat in the front row, Mercy beside him, Doc on her other side. Behind them, the pews filled with families who'd lost land, lost loved ones, lost years to grief they'd thought was just bad luck. Hargrove sat in chains. His lawyers from Helena flanked him. Expensive suits and leather cases, they looked confident. Hargrove looked broken. The judge heard testimony for 6 hours. Doc presented the water samples, the test results, medical records showing Mercy's arsenic levels. Father Miguel presented the church registry, the original death certificates with impossible dates. His hands shook, but his voice held steady. Ruby presented Sarah's telegrams, the coded warnings, the final message cut short, and then the judge called Mercy. She walked to the front. So small the chair swallowed her. The judge leaned down, spoke gently. You understand you have to tell the truth? Yes, sir. Even if it's scary? Yes, sir. All right, then. Tell me what happened. Mercy took a breath. My uncle put powder in the rain barrel. White powder. He thought I didn't see, but I did. I was up in the tree, and I watched him pour it in. When was this? Last winter, before Christmas. Did your mother know? She found out. She tested the water. Then she yelled at Uncle Silas. They fought. He said she was crazy, said no one would believe her. Mercy's voice dropped. Then she disappeared. Do you know where she went? No, but Uncle Silas said if I told anyone, I'd disappear too. She looked up. So I didn't tell, until Mr. Caleb found me, until I knew someone would listen. The judge's face showed nothing. That's very brave. Thank you. Hargrove's lawyer stood. Permission to cross-examine? Denied. She's 7 years old and you're a grown man. Sit down. The lawyer sat. The judge reviewed the evidence, flipped through pages, studied water samples, read telegrams. Finally, he looked up. Silas Hargrove, the evidence against you is substantial, damning, and it reveals a pattern of predatory behavior that shocks the conscience. He set down the papers. You systematically poisoned families, waited for them to die, then bought their properties for pennies. You forged legal documents. You murdered your own sister when she discovered your crimes, and you attempted to murder her child to hide your guilt. Hargrove's lawyer started to object. The judge silenced him with a look. You'll stand trial for 15 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, multiple counts of fraud and forgery. The territorial prosecutor will handle it from here. He turned to Sheriff Barlow. Remand him to custody. Helena jail. I don't trust him in a local cell. Barlow nodded, started to lead Hargrove away. The banker turned, looked at Caleb. His eyes were empty now. No rage, no fight, just hollow recognition. You took everything, he said. You took it from yourself, Caleb replied. They dragged him out. The crowd watched in silence. The judge cleared his throat. Now, the matter of the child's custody. Caleb's chest tightened. Mr. Thornwood, you kidnapped a minor from her legal guardian's home. I rescued her. I'm not finished. The judge's voice was stern. However, given the circumstances, immediate danger to the child's life, evidence of ongoing poisoning, and the legal guardian's subsequent arrest for murder, I'm ruling the kidnapping was justified under emergency doctrine. Caleb exhaled. That said, the child needs a permanent guardian. The state can provide. No. Mercy's voice. Small, but firm. She stood. I want to stay with Caleb. The judge looked at her. You understand he's not your family, not your blood? He came back for me. That's family. Silence. The judge's expression softened. Mr. Thornwood, are you prepared to take permanent custody, to provide for this child, to raise her as your own? Caleb looked down at Mercy, at her brown eyes and tangled hair, and the trust she'd placed in a man who'd almost given up on everything. Yes, sir. Then, by authority of the territorial court, I grant you emergency guardianship. Permanent adoption can be finalized once the criminal trial concludes. The judge's gavel fell. Court adjourned. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, in something quieter, relief, release, the sound of people remembering how to breathe. 2 weeks later, the spring thaw came hard. Ice broke on the creek, mud turned to soft earth, wildflowers pushed through dead grass. The branding happened as scheduled. 40 neighbors came. They worked the cattle, heated the irons, marked the calves with Thornwood's tea, and when they finished, they stayed, shared food, told stories, drank coffee in the yard while children played and the sun dropped low. Old Dutch pulled Caleb aside. Banks sold Hargrove's properties at auction. County kept some for back taxes. But your foreclosure note? Voided, ruled fraudulent. Ranch is yours, free and clear. Caleb nodded, couldn't speak. You did good, Dutch said. Your father would be proud. He walked away before Caleb could thank him. Mercy ran up, mud on her dress, laughter in her voice. Can I help with the next one? Can I hold the iron? You're too small. I'll grow. He looked at her, at the color returning to her cheeks, at the light returning to her eyes. Yeah, he said, you will. That night, after everyone left, they sat on the porch, coffee for him, milk for her, stars beginning to show. Does it still hurt? She asked. What? When you breathe. He looked at her, remembered the first time she'd said those words, remembered the cold and the fear and the certainty that he couldn't save anyone. No, he said, not anymore. She leaned against him, small and warm and alive. Me neither. They sat in the growing dark. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Cattle answered. The creek rushed over stones, carrying winter's memory downstream. Inside the cabin, Sarah's journal sat on the shelf. Evidence logged, justice served, but also something more, a record of a mother's love, a testament that someone had cared enough to write it all down. Tomorrow they'd ride to the cemetery, plant flowers on Sarah's grave, found by spring runoff, buried proper now. They'd tell her about the trial, about Hargrove in chains, about her daughter, safe and healing. But tonight they just sat, a broken man and a rescued child, learning what family meant when it wasn't about blood, learning what home meant when it was chosen. And in the distance, the mountains stood dark against the stars, silent witnesses to the truth that sometimes when winter finally breaks, spring comes hard and fast and full of second chances. Summer came slow that year, the kind that sneaks up after a hard winter where every warm day feels stolen from the cold. Caleb worked the ranch. Mercy learned to ride, to mend fence, to read the sky for weather. Doc visited twice a week, checking lungs that grew stronger, cheeks that filled out, eyes that stopped looking over their shoulders. The reporter from Butte published his story. It ran in 14 newspapers across 3 territories. Federal marshals came. More evidence surfaced. More victims identified. The trial was set for autumn in Helena. Hargrove would hang. Everyone knew it. The lawyers knew it. Even Hargrove knew it. But that was autumn's business. Summer belonged to the living. One evening, Caleb sat on the porch watching fireflies rise from the grass. Mercy sat beside him, wrapped in Martha's old quilt, drawing in a sketchbook Ruby had given her. She held it up. Done. 3 figures, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with red hair floating above them like a star. Below, a house, a barn, cattle, and written across the bottom in careful letters, the Thornwood family. Caleb's throat tightened. You like it? Mercy asked. I love it. She set it aside, leaned her head against his arm. Do you think Mama knows that I'm okay? I think she does. How? Because wherever people go when they're done fighting, I reckon they get to see the endings, get to know their battles mattered. He looked down at her. Your mama saved you, with that journal, with her courage. She's the reason you're here. Mercy was quiet for a long time. Then, I'm glad you found me. Me too, little one. The fireflies drifted higher. The creek sang its endless song, and somewhere in the dark, the mountains kept their watch. Inside the cabin, the branding iron hung on the wall. Martha's picture sat on the mantel beside Sarah's. Two women who'd never met, but who'd both known what it meant to love someone enough to leave them protected. Caleb had lost a wife, a daughter, a future he'd thought was fixed and certain, but he'd found something else, something harder and truer and earned through winter's long dying, a family built on choice, on showing up, on refusing to walk away when walking away was easier. Mercy's breathing slowed, deepened. She'd fallen asleep against him, small and warm and trusting. He didn't move, didn't want to break the moment. Above them, stars filled the sky like promises. And for the first time since Martha died, Caleb Thornwood sat in the quiet of his porch and felt something he'd thought was gone forever. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, the kind that comes from surviving, from fighting through the cold and finding spring on the other side, from learning that sometimes, when everything breaks, what you build from the pieces is stronger than what you lost. The night deepened, the fireflies faded, and a rancher and a little girl sat together in the dark, breathing easy at last.